Welcome to History. In our lesson today, let's begin reviewing several facts we've learned from the Wright brothers. Tell me the place where Orville and Wilbur conducted their first test flight. Students watching. And Kaden.
North Carolina.
It was. After their printing business, what did the brothers repair and design, Gage?
Bicycles.
Yes. Which brother successfully piloted an engine-powered airplane? Students watching. And Morgan.
Orville and Wilbur Wright.
Well done. And the one of those, which one was it? Was it Orville or was it Wilbur, Morgan?
Orville.
Orville is the correct brother there. Now, thinking through the life of George Washington Carver, what do we call the study of the soil and of growing plants and animals? Students watching. And Carly. Starts with an A. Arthur?
Agriculture.
Good. What was it, Carly?
Agriculture.
It was agriculture. Because George was so good with plants and helping them when they weren't growing well, what was his nickname given to him by his neighbors? Students watching? Anna. Una. Emily.
Plant doctor.
It was, girls. What was it? It was the plant doctor. Tell me one of the plants that George Washington Carver did experiments with. One of them he found over 118 uses for. Another he found over 300 uses for. Give me one. Students watching. And Carson. Help him out, Kaden. Adriana.
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato, and then the other was the peanut. Well done. 300 uses for the peanut and over 118 uses for the sweet potato. Now, picking up where we began talking about Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe went to a boarding school, and that's where he began to learn several skills. And one thing that was recognized during his time at the boarding school was his great athletic ability. So we're going to find out some accomplishments he's able to achieve as an athlete. Let's take a look at some words we'll come across in our reading. Read our first word, Carson.
Olympics.
Yes, now these would be games held against or competitions held between countries. So these Olympic games during the time of Jim Thorpe were held in this country. Anna?
Sweden.
Yes, and that's where these Olympic games were taking place. Jim Thorpe was so good in certain events and areas that he qualified to compete on America's team representing the United States of America in the Olympic Games in the country of Sweden. Read this event, Carson.
Pentathlon.
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 Good. And then Madison. Long E.
Decathlon.
Yes, decathlon. Good. These are two different events. The pentathlon, like the prefix pent, means that it has 5 events. And then decathlon, that first prefix there, deca, shows us that it has 10 events. So we have an event that takes place with 5 different events and then 10 different events. Now, the king of Sweden during these Olympic events was this man. Read it, Morgan.
King Gustav V.
Yes, well done. And then during this time, the king of Sweden recognized that Jim Thorpe was such a great athlete that he said he was one of the greatest that he had seen. Read this phrase for us, Adriana.
America's athlete of the century.
Yes, and that was a special recognition and a special honor given to Jim Thorpe. Let's read more about his accomplishments, and then after we finish reading about him, we're going to read about another Olympic athlete that ends up competing on behalf of America. Now, the letters of his name that were given to him are his initials. Read them for us, Una.
JC.
JC, exactly. So we're going to pick up on page 384. Page 384 is where we're going to begin with the 1912 Olympics. Begin there for us, Asa.
1912 Olympics. In 1912, Jim Thorpe was honored to be chosen for the United States Olympic track team. The games took place in Stockholm,
Good.
Sweden. He was to compete in the pentathlon and
Long E. D.
decathlon.
Good.
The pentathlon consisted
Sure I.
consisted
It.
consisted
Consisted.
consisted of 5 tracks and field events. In the decathlon consisted of 10 track and field events.
Yes, continue, Deb.
During the first day of competition, the athletes had to complete through a terrible rainstorm. On the final day, Jim Thorpe's track shoes were stolen. He found 2 shoes that were not the same size, wore an extra sock to make the shoe fit better, and ran the race. His time was even faster than before. Jim Thorpe would not let anything stand in his way.
Good accuracy. Continue, Kathleen. He won.
He won gold in both events. When King Gustav V of Sweden gave Jim Thorpe his gold medal, he said, "Sir, you are the greatest athlete in the world." Jim Thorpe was the first Native American to win a gold medal for his country, and he is the only man to ever win gold in both of these events.
Good accuracy. Now let's pause. So on the first day of competition, he had to compete during a very heavy rainstorm along with the other athletes. On the final day, what happened to his shoes, students watching? And Kaden?
They were stolen.
So what did he do, Jimmy?
The shoes and
Exactly, he chose to use some other ones. Were they the same size, students watching? Arthur?
no.
So what did he do to make them fit?
Put on 2 pairs of socks.
Exactly. So he found a solution to the problem. He did not let that stop him. He continued to compete well. He won gold in both of those events. And the king said, "You are the greatest athlete in the world." What a recognition to be given at those Olympic events. And Jim Thorpe was the first Native American to win a gold medal for his country, the United States of America, and he's the only one who's been able to win gold in both of those events. Continue reading about him for us, Madison.
The gold medal ceremonies happened the greatest day of Jim Thorpe's life. However, when he returned home, an article was printed saying that he had made money playing minor league baseball. The Olympics were only for athletes who were not paid to play a sport. Even though he did not know about that rule, he had still broken it. Jim Thorpe had to give his gold medals back, and his name was taken out of the record books, as if he had never competed.
Good expression. Pause. What great disappointment did Jim Thorpe have after the Olympic Games, students watching? Emily.
He had to give his gold medals back because he broke a rule.
Exactly. Even though he didn't know about it, he was still responsible for it. And so he had to give those things back. And it was as if he didn't even compete. But he wasn't a quitter. He was going to continue to do what he could to be successful and make most of the use of the talents that he had been given. So let's continue with not a quitter. Continue, Gage.
Not a quitter. Jim Thorpe's disappointment did not stop him. First, he played Major League Baseball for 6 years.
Start again with first T.
First, he played
Long A.
Major
Yes.
League
League. Yes.
Baseball for 6 years. He also played professional football and became the first president of the American Professional Football Association. When he was ready to move away from sports, Jim Thorpe decided to become a actor.
Yes, an actor.
He had small parts in many Western films.
Yes, now let's pause. What sport did Jim Thorpe play for almost 6 years, students watching? ASAP.
Major League Baseball.
Yes, Major League Baseball is right. And then he played some professional football for a while, and he became the president of the American Professional Football Association. He continued to make the most use that he could with his talents. He was an actor. He worked in several Western films. He didn't let the disappointment stop him, and he didn't give up. He kept on pushing to accomplish that next goal. Let's find out some other honors that he has been later given. Read about them for us, Morgan.
Honors. In 1950, Jim Thorpe was named the greatest football player and the greatest overall male athlete of the year. A film was made about his life and his great accomplishments in sports. After Jim Thorpe died in 1953, he was still honored with several awards. 10 years later, he was honored as a great member of the Professional Football Hall of Fame.
Start that sentence again. 10 years later.
10 years later, he was honored as a charter member of the Professional Football Hall of Fame. The decision was finally made to restore his Olympic medals, which were given to his family.
Continue, Cadence.
Each year, the National Football League gives an award to the most valuable player. This award is called the Jim Thorpe Trophy. In 1999, the U.S. Congress passed a resolution naming Jim Thorpe as America's Athlete of the Century. Mr. Thorpe died before his medals were returned or many honors were given to him, but he is remembered as a man who refused to give up. He refused to let hardships discourage him. Jim Thorpe worked hard and used his God-given talents to the best of his ability.
So let's pause. Tell me a reward or a recognition or a way of honoring Jim Thorpe that he has been given since this time when those things were done to him, as far as things that ended after those Olympics. What other honor has been given to him since then? Students watching? And Morgan?
He got medals.
Yes, he was given medals. Tell me something else, Kaden.
He went to the Football Hall of Fame.
Yes, he went to the American Football Hall of Fame, named America's greatest athlete of the century, and those medals were eventually returned to his family. So although he didn't get to see all of this recognition during his lifetime, others recognized his achievements, and they were able to give him and his family that honor in return. There you see a statue at the bottom of that page of Jim Thorpe in the decathlon discus throw. That's one of the events that he competed in, and there you see a picture of him as well. He wanted to do the best that he could with the talents and abilities that God had given him. Let's look at Stop and Think at the top of the next page. Read that for us, Adriana.
Stop and think. God has given each one of you a talent. When you find what your talent is, use it to the best of your ability and allow God to work through you, even if you are not rewarded. What is one talent you believe God has given to you?
And pause, smile if you think you know, students watching. And Kaden.
Playing football.
Maybe being able to play some sports there. Carly. Being able to have music abilities with piano or other instruments. Those are great things that you can use for God's honor and glory. Now, sometimes you're not going to get recognition for those talents and abilities you have, but it's not all about that recognition. It's not getting lots of fame and lots of honors for yourself. It's about using those to the best of your ability and bringing honor and glory to God. Let's take out a pencil and look at our comprehension check together at this time. The first section is true and false. Number 1, Jim Thorpe broke the Carlisle School record in the high jump. Is that true or false with that event? Students watching? And Dev?
True.
It is true. Number 2, Jim Thorpe once played football against Ronald Reagan, a future president of the United States. Was that the president he played against? Students watching? You know, who was it?
False.
False. Who was it? Do you remember? Help her out. Adriana? Yes, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So it's false because that future president we'll learn more about is Dwight D. Eisenhower. Number 3, in 1912, Jim Thorpe was chosen for the U.S. Olympic Games in Paris, France. Was that the city and the state that he competed in the Olympics in? Students watching? Carson?
No.
No, what would it be?
Stockholm, Sweden.
Yes, well done. Stockholm, Sweden. Stockholm is the city, and then Sweden is the country. Number 4, Mr. Thorpe became the first president of the American Professional Track Association. Gage?
False.
What should it be?
Football.
It should be football. Well done. Number 5, in 1999, the U.S. Congress named Jim Thorpe America's Athlete of the Century. Emily?
True.
That is a true statement. Well done. We're going to pause here at this time, and we're going to pick up learning more about JC, or our next athlete of the century. Go ahead and open to page 388, and we're going to start by taking a sneak peek into his name and how we have the letters abbreviated JC, but how do we have the name Jesse Owens at the top? Let's read more about how he has the name Jesse. Begin reading for us, Arthur.
Jesse, James Cleveland,
Long E.
Cleveland Owens was born in 1913 in Alabama. His grandparents had been slaves during the time of the Civil War. Now his father was a farmer. Life was not easy for the Owens family, but they trusted God and made the best of what they had.
Good accuracy, Josh. Continue. James.
James went by the nickname JC. When JC was young, he was often sick, but there was usually not enough money to see a doctor. Once JC's mother even had to perform surgery on him at home. JC was brave and didn't even cry. As JC grew weaker, he heard his father praying for him. God heard Mr. Owens' prayer and helped JC to recover and to grow even stronger.
Good speed, Carly.
JC's family did not have money for toys. He spent most of his time playing with his brothers and sisters. His favorite thing to do was run barefoot in the open fields. No other child could catch JC. He was the fastest boy around. He once said, "I always loved running. You could go in any direction, just on the strength of your feet and the courage of your lungs."
Very smooth pause. Even though life was not very easy for the Owens family, what was something that they did? Students watching? Deaf. Who did they trust?
God.
Yes, they trusted God for help, and then they just made the most of the situation that they could, that they were given. What was JC's favorite thing to do? Students watching? Lexi.
Running.
Yes, raise your hand. How many of you, that's your favorite thing to do? Oh, I see a lot of good runners out there, hands down. I see some students watching who enjoy running just like JC did as well. Well, these are his initials, but we know from the top section that his name becomes known as Jesse Owens. So let's find out how that change happens. Continue, Aiden.
When JC was 9 years old, his family moved to Cleveland, Ohio. There were no more open fields, but JC still found places to run. On JC's first day in his new school, the teacher asked him what his name was. He answered, "My name is JC." Because of his southern accent, she thought he said Jesse. He was too shy to correct her, and he has been called Jesse ever since.
Well done. So how did his name change from JC to Jesse? Cadence.
He had a southern accent, so it made his name JC sound like Jesse.
Exactly correct. And he was too shy, so he didn't correct his teacher, and that's how we remember him today. We're going to pick up with Jesse Owens' story in our next few lessons. Right now, go ahead and close your book, set it to the side. We're going to review several things we've learned so far in these lessons. So let's have our ladies come quietly line up, and Carly keep score for the girls, and then our boys line up, and Jimmy, you may keep score for the boys. First two contestants step to the middle, face our audience. Keep track of your score, students watching. See if you can answer just as quickly and just as accurately. Tell me what we call the group that collects weather reports, storm warnings, and gives forecasts.
Weather Bureau.
Tybo team's a point next to. What was the group, or what is the group of museums and research centers run by the U.S. government? Students watching? It is the Smithsonian Institution. No points here. Next two. What toy did Orville and Wilbur's father give them?
A window flying toy.
Both of you have a point. Well done. What were the brothers awarded from both Congress and the Smithsonian? Students watching? It is medals. No points here. Next two. How long was their first flight?
12 seconds.
12 seconds. No points. It is 12. Next two. What was the first type of plane the brothers made?
Glider.
Tybo team's a point. What is the study of soil and the growing of plants and animals?
Astronomy.
Students watching?
Architect.
You're close. Agriculture. No points here. Next two. Tell me the name of the school where George became professor of agriculture.
Tuskegee Institute.
Boys have it. Next two. How did George earn money for school?
Laundry.
Girls. Next two. What university was Carver the first African American to graduate from?
Iowa State University.
Good, Deb. Boys have it. Next two. Which item did Carver find 118 uses for?
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato is right. Girls have it. Next two. What was George the director of at Tuskegee? Students want. Yes, good. Adriana has it. Next two. Tell me what we call a sport involving running and jumping competitions.
Olympics.
This is held at the Olympics, but it's a certain competition. Students watching? It would be track. You are almost there. Next two. Who is considered the greatest male athlete of the 20th century according to Congress?
American athlete of the century.
Yes, who was given that title?
Jim Thorpe.
Jim Thorpe. Asa has it for the boys. Next two. What high school record did Jim break on his first try?
The high jump.
Girls have it. Next two. What association was Jim the president of?
Football.
Girls were here faster. Next two, last question. What was Jesse's favorite thing to do as a boy?
Run.
Tybo team's a point. Girls, you may return to your seat. And it looks like, how many do we have for the girls, Carly? 8, and for the boys, Jimmy?
7.
So it looks like the girls won by 1 today. Girls, you may give yourself a pat on the back, and boys, you may return to your seat. Students watching, we'll pick up with Jesse's story in our next lesson. You'll want to continue to review the things we've learned so far from chapters 36 through 38 so you can stay current with our information, and we'll pick up with Jesse's story in our next lesson.